in a shocking turn of events that has shaken Senegal to its core and sent tremors throughout the Pan-African world. The powerful political bond between President Bassirou Faye and Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko has fractured in the public eye. Once seen as an unbreakable duo symbolizing a new dawn for Senegal, their relationship has now deteriorated into a high-stakes political feud. At what was supposed to be a celebratory event, the 11th anniversary of their political movement, PAF Sonko stunned the crowd with a fiery speech that blindsided the president and the public alike. In an emotionally charged address, Sonko accused President Faye of abandoning the ideals they fought for, failing to shield him from political attacks, and obstructing the very reforms that were meant to liberate Senegal from the grips of neocolonial control. His words weren't just criticism, they were a direct challenge to Faye's leadership, delivered with the rage of betrayal. As Sonko's words echoed through the air in Dakar, the crowd stood in shocked silence. These were not the words of a frustrated politician, they were the battle cries of a man cornered and disappointed, a revolutionary leader feeling betrayed by the very system he helped create. He declared that if the president continued to block his efforts, then he must step aside and let him govern freely. The charged atmosphere, from the narrow streets of Sandaga to the university lecture halls once energized by chants of Diomaye, Sonko, quickly turned tense. The revolution they had sparked together now teetered on the edge of collapse. Only a year ago, Faye and Sonko had made history. After years of resistance and imprisonment, their political alliance brought down the old regime and swept them into power. Their message was clear: end foreign domination, restore sovereignty, and rebuild Senegal from the ground up. But now, all of that progress is in danger. The rift between the president and prime minister has left many Senegalese wondering if their long-awaited revolution is unraveling before their eyes. To understand how things reached this point, one must look back at the journey these two men shared. Both former tax inspectors, Faye and Sonko first crossed paths within the bureaucratic machinery of Senegal's civil service. They witnessed firsthand the widespread corruption and foreign dependency strangling the nation. In 2014, Sonko founded PASTEF, a political movement grounded in transparency, independence, and Pan-African unity. Faye stood by him from the start, becoming a trusted confidant and later the party's Secretary General. Their friendship was personal as well as political. Faye even named one of his sons after Sonko, a powerful testament to their bond. When Sonko became a leading figure in the 2019 elections, drawing national attention and support from Senegal's youth, he quickly became a threat to the ruling elite. His rise led to state persecution, including a controversial rape charge in 2021 that many believed was politically motivated. Protests erupted, and violence flooded the streets as Senegal's youth rose in his defense. In 2023, the crackdown intensified. Sonko was sentenced to 2 years for corrupting youth, and Faye was also jailed for criticizing the judiciary. Their party was dissolved, and Sonko was barred from contesting the 2024 election. But the establishment underestimated the fire they had ignited. Amid public pressure and growing unrest, President Macky Sall granted them amnesty just before the election. With Sonko disqualified, he threw his full weight behind Faye's candidacy. The campaign, run under the rallying cry Diomaye is Sonko, was nothing short of a political masterstroke. Faye won the presidency with a decisive 54% of the vote, a powerful rejection of the status quo. He appointed Sonko as prime minister, and together they stood as a symbol of a new, people-powered Senegal. The continent watched with admiration as these two young leaders took the reins of power, promising a break from foreign interference and a bold path forward. But governing proved to be far more difficult than campaigning. The economic woes that fueled their rise to power persisted. Inflation remained high, the cost of living soared, and promises to renegotiate exploitative foreign contracts stalled in legal gridlock. The revolutionary rhetoric began to feel like empty words as the realities of governance set in. For Sonko, the disillusionment was personal. He accused President Faye of consolidating power within the presidency, rendering his own office powerless. He claimed that Faye's reluctance to implement sweeping reforms, such as removing French military presence, abandoning the CFA franc, and overhauling oil and gas deals, amounted to betrayal. The very man he helped lift into power was now, in his eyes, holding the revolution back. Too many supporters. It feels like a nightmare. Faye has made multiple visits to Paris and met with French President Emmanuel Macron, a sharp contrast to his anti-France stance during the campaign. His outreach to leaders like Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire and Patrice Talon of Benin, both seen as French allies, has only fueled suspicion that he is now aligning with the very powers they once fought against. This perceived shift has devastated their base. Faye was supposed to be our liberator, cried Awa, a school teacher who once campaigned door-to-door for their party. Now it feels like we've been fooled. The hope that once burned so brightly has dimmed under the weight of broken promises and internal power struggles. The movement that started as a force of unity and rebellion now faces its greatest threat, not from the outside, but from within. With both men standing firm, the risk of total political collapse looms. What began as a brotherhood, forged in the fires of resistance, is now unraveling into bitter rivalry. For Senegal and for Africa, the outcome of this power struggle may determine whether this revolution survives or becomes just another chapter in a long history of betrayed dreams. Now, people are beginning to ask, what happened to the revolution? Many in Senegal are voicing their frustration, as President Faye is seen meeting with the very leaders his campaign once criticized for maintaining Africa's dependency on France. The hope that once energized the youth is turning into disappointment, and hashtags like #FayeBetrayal and #SONKO are gaining momentum online. Across social media platforms, citizens are describing the current administration as a fading dream. Some even suggest that President Faye has grown too comfortable in power, influenced by those who never supported the bold Pan-African reforms led by Prime Minister Sonko. Meanwhile, Sonko continues to champion the ideals that once united the movement. In a May 2025 interview, he renewed his call to ditch the CFA franc, not just as a symbolic act, but as a vital economic decision for national sovereignty. He emphasized that the country's natural resources, particularly oil and gas, must be protected from foreign exploitation. Speaking at a recent rally, he declared that this struggle isn't just about Senegal. It's about protecting the dignity and future of all African nations. In response to growing speculation about their divide, President Faye addressed the issue on July 14, 2025, during a ceremony where he received the National Dialogue Report. Attempting to calm the waters, he stated clearly that there was no conflict between him and Sonko. He called their relationship a friendship and insisted their shared goal was to tackle the hardships facing the Senegalese people. However, for many observers, his words fell flat. The president's refusal to directly acknowledge Sonko's grievances, particularly the claim that he's being restricted from implementing reforms, has led to more questions than answers. Political analysts noted that while Faye's remarks were tactful, they didn't address the real issues at stake. Sonko's growing sense of being sidelined, both within government and within the movement he helped build, is now the core of this conflict. Experts say that this is more than just a personality clash. It's a reflection of deeper, unresolved tensions within Senegal's political framework. Unlike in many other countries, where rival parties control the presidency and the premiership, both Faye and Sonko belong to the same party, a setup once seen as a strength. But that closeness may now be their greatest vulnerability. Some scholars suggest that Sonko, as the original founder and party leader, always viewed himself as the architect of this administration. In contrast, Faye holds the highest office in the land. That imbalance has always been fragile. Sonko's speech on July 10th was likely an attempt to reassert his authority, not just within the cabinet, but also inside the party. Some believe he may be setting the stage for a run in the 2029 presidential election, assuming his legal troubles are resolved by then. Others see his outburst as a desperate effort to prevent being completely sidelined. Analysts argue that Sonko is aware of the warning signs His influence is under threat, both in government and within the party he created. The opposition has quickly seized the opportunity. A coalition of over 70 parties is calling for early parliamentary elections, accusing the government of mismanagement. Meanwhile, former President Macky Sall, now repositioning himself as a leading opposition figure, has been vocal in his critiques and appears ready to make a comeback if cracks in the ruling party deepen. From a broader perspective, the Faye-Sonko dispute has sent shockwaves across the continent. Senegal's 2024 election had been hailed as a turning point, a peaceful, democratic transfer of power led by leaders who championed anti-neocolonial reforms and economic justice. Their rise to power inspired millions, particularly in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where military coups had become the norm. But now, with Senegal's leadership facing internal turmoil, that inspiration risks turning into disillusionment. Senegal's economy is still heavily reliant on international aid and investment, much of it tied to former colonial powers. The oil and gas sector, once seen as a game changer for the country, remains under the control of foreign multinationals. Through old contracts signed by previous governments, renegotiating those deals is complicated, and President Faye seems to be taking a cautious approach. In contrast, Sonko demands urgent action. Yet, the powerful web of influence, known as Francafrique, which continues to link West African nations to Paris, remains a major obstacle. President Faye's meetings with French and regional leaders have sparked concern among his former supporters. Many feel he is beginning to act like the very politicians they voted out. Power changes people, said one university student in Dakar. He promised revolution, but now he's just another leader playing it safe. Meanwhile, Sonko remains a symbol of defiance for the Pan-African movement. His message, to break free from neocolonial economic structures, still resonates strongly, but his critics accuse him of being confrontational and politically reckless, which could hurt the very cause he champions. Now, as this political crisis deepens, Senegal finds itself at a critical crossroads. President Faye must find a way to assert his authority without alienating Sonko's powerful base. Removing Sonko could trigger a backlash and fracture the ruling party, giving the opposition a golden opportunity. But allowing Sonko too much influence risks making the presidency appear weak or ineffective. For Sonko, the situation is equally delicate. His bold public criticism of the president has strengthened his image as a fearless leader, but it's also painted him as unpredictable. If he continues to escalate tensions, he risks losing support from moderate voters. On the other hand, retreating could weaken his reputation as the face of Senegal's revolutionary promise. From a Pan-Africanist viewpoint, this rift is about more than just political rivalry. It is a test of whether Africa's new wave of leadership can hold firm under pressure, both from within and from global powers. Over the past few years, movements across the region have rejected neocolonial control and demanded sovereignty. The rise of Faye and Sonko was a key chapter in that story. But now, the path ahead looks uncertain. Walking through Dakar, you can feel the tension in the air. In marketplaces, cafes, and taxis, everyone is talking about one thing. Can these two leaders find common ground and deliver the transformation they promised? Or will their personal and political differences drag the movement into chaos and open the door for the old establishment to return? The world is watching Senegal. The choices made in the weeks ahead will not only determine the fate of one government, but will also send a signal to the rest of Africa. Is lasting, people-driven change truly possible through democracy and unity? Or will ego, division, and foreign pressure destroy what many believe to be a new beginning? As Senegal stands at this pivotal moment, Faye and Sonko must rise above their dispute to protect the very revolution they ignited. The hopes of millions depend on their ability to put aside differences and lead together. Their unity isn't just political, it's symbolic of an entire continent's dream of sovereignty, dignity, and progress. If they can reconcile, they may still lead Senegal, and perhaps Africa, toward a freer future. But failure could mean not just the collapse of a government, but but the crushing of a vision generations have longed for.